My name is Gita Rose. If you are watching this, you may already have an idea of who I am. I've just recently started talking about my stories about becoming a vocal channel, and I've started sharing a little bit more of the information that I am bringing through. This is a bit of a retelling of a blog that I just posted a few days ago called Phone Gita, which can be found on my blog, Gita Rising Rose. Right now it's just a blogger site. I am getting a website set up that is gitarose.com. You can go there and also see the blog, but that's really it. I'm in the process of getting everything set up and doing multiple things, following multiple lines of excitement at the same time. So if you've already read that blog, there's not necessarily going to be any new information in that. Doing these type of vlog, video type settings has also been an excitement of mine, and honestly is scarier than writing a blog and posting some cute pictures on Instagram. This is a bit more of where I feel the meat of the information can come through and people can get a better gauge on my energy and who I am, and it's a really fun way to share with each other, but it's way more scary, for real. But you just gotta do it and have fun, and we're all a little weird and we love seeing people be authentic and vulnerable. So I was an actor for many years in my life. I started in musical theater when I was about 5 or 6 years old, was trained as a vocalist from about 8 years old. I always knew the importance of story. I always was connected to the idea of the imagination being a conduit in a way. I was also always connected to the idea of there being something more, of there being a greater being or being magic in a way. I always knew that even growing up. Being an actor, I learned how to be able to tune myself into different states, to be able to play a character and to get really centered in that character's perspective and their ideas and their beliefs and how they walk and how they move. And it's a type of channeling. All of us channel in different ways, pretty much all the time, from my perspective. However, there are different levels of being in that state. It can be when someone is writing a song, singing a song, acting in a show, playing a character, writing a book, writing a story, playing a sport, and being in the flow, being in the zone, doing anything that we love to do. And some of us are even aware at points that our creations can take on a life of their own. So I already had this foundation in me. I started having a bit of a spiritual awakening, maybe around 18 or 19, going through different layers of meditation and reading different books, but really still very much within the system of things that are already told to us. When I was about 22, I met a really good friend of mine, Jen Thompson. And she was the first person that I met that openly talked about being psychic, could see beings, could see ghosts, could listen and hear. She is a employed intuitive and clairvoyant, and that's how she pays her rent now. And at this point in time, she was in school learning to train to do this. And I had never met anyone like that. And I knew I needed to talk to her. I knew that this person had information for me. And so she did a clairvoyant reading for me, and she told me that you have all these aliens in your space. I didn't know what that meant, like in my space, like what does that mean? Oh, in my field, okay, in my energy auric field, okay. But aliens? Aliens are real? And she says to me, yeah, I think there are. I had blinders on, in a sense, about extraterrestrials and aliens. I knew that they existed. I'd maybe seen some of those kind of cheesy UFO documentaries. I knew what the X-Files was, but that stuff was for boys. I was all about the mermaids and the princesses and the fairies and the magic, and all the UFO and extraterrestrial stuff was like for boys, but it was very much, looking back on it now, I can see that there were like blinders that were put in place. And as soon as she said that, boom, how did I forget? How could I have forgotten that there were aliens? Of course, there's aliens and extraterrestrials, like duh. Flash to a few weeks later, Jen and I are hanging out in her house and we're having these amazing connections and talks, and she gives me her perspective of the history of creation, going into different ideas and concepts that she has been laying her own foundation and working with for like 15 years, I think, at that point. Basically, the concept that the human genetics is from extraterrestrials or alien consciousness, and that we are all hybridized in a way. Jen also took it down her very own deep, willful path, very much based in the teachings of the right use of will channelings, and she gave a very comprehensive of her own view of the history of creation. Like, no joke, Sista downloaded to me that night, and everything made sense. I'm not going to go into the specifics about this. I can, and maybe at some point, about our true history. I feel most of the people watching this have an idea of what I'm talking about, and those that don't, I'm just going to invite you to do your own research, fall down the rabbit hole. If you get really scared and you have weird questions, then you can always contact me, and you can never, ever, ever freak me out. Like, no, not at this point. I'm going to be like, yeah, yep. So maybe at some point I'll go down and actually talk about what Jen downloaded to me that night and what I have spent the last 8 years of my life assembling in my own perspective. So she gave me the story of creation. And then she offered for me and her to smoke a little cannabis, a little marijuana, a little pot. I didn't smoke at this point. It had always affected me really intensely. I went into these altered states of consciousness that is now what I understand it to be, but then I really didn't get it. I was downloading, I was out in the stratosphere, I was talking to God, I was having all of these understandings, and my punk rock friends in high school are, watching movies and throwing Funyuns at each other, and I can't move on the couch. So it always was a bit too much for me. But by this point, like I said, I had learned a bit of meditation. I had watched the Loose Change documentary about some of the alternative 9/11 stories. I was prepped and ready. My consciousness was expanded. The filters were blown open. So I took one pretty decent hit, and instantly this wave, this intensity of fear came over me. And I felt comfortable enough to tell Jen I'm feeling really scared right now. And being trained, being in school herself to be able to help lead people through different styles of meditation and process techniques, she offered if I would like her to take me through what is called a parts work exercise. In that state, I felt super safe. I trusted she'd be able to help me. I said, absolutely. So she asked me to put my fear on a stage, allow it to take a form, and to put myself as far away from the fear as I felt that I needed to. So I did, and instantly it turned into this intensely vivid dragon. My fear manifested itself as a dragon on stage. I was like all the way up in like the tippy top of the balcony looking down on this. But it was the first moment where I really saw something with my third eye. And I opened my eyes and I was like, whoa, Jen, there was like a movie in my head. She's like, yeah. I'm like, that's what it's like? Yeah, that can be what it's like. Whoa. Do you want to go back in? She says. And I said, yeah, I do, actually. I know that it's my fear that I'm looking at, but that was so amazing, so vivid, so colorful that I definitely want to go back in. So I went back in and the dragon appeared, and she told me to go as close to it as I felt I could. And so I went down into the mezzanine and I could see the dragon. And then I went a little bit closer and I could see it even closer. And then at that point I could see that the scales of the dragon took on this holographic mirror type of image. And I knew in that moment it was a mirror, and I was being reflected different parts of myself. And then this light shone through the scales and the mirrors and the fractals. And I was thrown up into the catwalk of even higher than the balcony. I was up at the tippy top where, the crew's gonna go to rig the lights. All the way up at the top. And I felt this energy come around me, this very loving, beautiful energy, but also very pinpointed and specific. And I was given the understanding that there's some beings here and you have a certain type of agreement, and you can always choose in the moment to say yes. It's always going to be conscious in that way. We're ready for you now if you'd like to begin. And I was getting all of these images just of these colors, really bright, very beautiful, vivid colors. And then at that moment, I was aware that my body was talking. Being an actor, I was very familiar with this type of split consciousness. Now, it's not something that necessarily like good actors do, but I think it happens to most of us from time to time. That you're saying your lines, you're doing the dance, you're doing something on autopilot. You've done it so many times, you're in a however long of a run, this is the 30th time that you've done whatever part of the show, and you're in it, you're doing it, you're expressing it, but then there's the part of your brain that kind of floats away or floats back in, depending on how you want to look at it, and you go on autopilot. You go out of the moment a little bit. You're still moving, but then your brain comes in, your personality construct, and it's like, oh, what do I want for lunch? Or like, that guy in the third row is kind of cute. And then you're like, oh wait, no, I'm playing a role. I should like be back in the moment and be present. But being an actor, I'm very aware of that ability to kind of have this odd sense of a split consciousness. So in this moment that I was receiving a message from these beings, I was aware then that my body started talking. It was very loud and it was very energetic, and the only images or kind of feelings that I got from it was this very wise, ancient, calm, very zen, almost kind of like Asian Japanese feeling to it. And then I was told that we're not going to sugarcoat it for you. At times things may be a little bumpy. You're going to feel potentially a little alienated. It's going to be challenging, but ultimately rewarding. At the end of the day, we can tell you that you will know that magic exists and that love exists, and that everything that you've ever thought maybe to be true is actually true, and not only true, but how reality functions. And so in that moment I said yes. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but I'm feeling the love and like, let's go for it. So I come out of the state and I'm a little like, just kind of like you're waking up from a dream and dazed, and Jen, and also stoned, honestly, too, at the moment, you know, like that's real talk. Then Jen looks at me and she's like shocked. She's like, that was fucking crazy. Have you ever heard of Bashar? I'm like, nope, no idea what you're talking about. She tells me there is something called vocal channeling. A little bit of how I have come to understand specifically vocal channeling, which is a slightly different state maybe than being in another channeling state, being writing or playing or acting. To me, it feels like a slightly more refined or a slightly deeper version of the state. Basically how it's functioning is that we are all radios and we are able to tune our frequency, and usually a channel is taken through, a vocal channel specifically, is taken through different layers of their own emotional body, different feelings, different doubts, different worries or different anxieties, to be able to bring their emotional state a little bit closer to the frequency of the being that they have a connection to. From then, again, from my perspective, it was very much like the script was given to me. The character persona was presented in a very clear, defined way, where then it was very easy for me to act as this character, like the ultimate form of improv. So in no way is it any type of possession, and it is always a choice. Every single time that I go into the altered state, it's very much a conscious choice. So I started listening to Bashar. I went home that night and I looked up Bashar. For those of you who don't know, Bashar is a being that is brought forth through the channel of Darryl Anka. Darryl Anka is a very wonderful, very kind man who lives in LA and who had a very similar experience in a way that this just kind of spontaneously happened to him. Information can be found specifically about who Bashar is on the Bashar website, as well as on YouTube. There's lots of really good interviews where Darryl Anka himself goes into his perspective about how this happened and who Bashar is to him. I am in no way affiliated with Bashar Communications, and I am always wanting to be sure that I really stress this is from my perspective. Of course, I've listened to the Bashar information. I've listened to all of Darryl Anka's interviews. I think things have seeped through osmosis, as well as my own interactions with the beings. So Bashar represents himself to be an extraterrestrial from our future, a potential timeline from our future. Seemingly right now, our most likely potential future. He is what we would understand as an offshoot, as a descendant from what we would understand as the ET human hybrid, the gray human hybrid program. This is where, if you've never heard any of this before, it sounds totally cuckoo, and I get it. But as the story goes, humanity was on a negative timeline where they developed a very harsh reliance on technology, a severing from the emotional body and from the planet. Such a reliance on technology eventually led them down the line of needing to mutate themselves, essentially change their genetic structure to be able to live on this version of Earth that was becoming less and less and less compatible. From then, they de-evolved so much that they actually lost the ability to procreate. But their technological understanding was so advanced that they had the ability to tunnel back into time to be able to connect with essentially different versions of themselves that were in a different timeline before this shift happened, before transhumanism essentially took hold. Then from there, these different agreements, what have now become labeled as the abductions, these were agreements though from our soul level to partake in this program to be able to help not only humanity, but essentially, as I see it, the rest of the universe, of all of creation, of the all that is, to be able to evolve. Because what we are all agreeing to do together is to listen to, work with, hone, and understand the emotional body and our relationship to the planet. So as I see it, and as also it is presented by most of these beings, specifically Bashar as well, but usually any beings that are really worth their salt, coming from anywhere, any dimension, any collective, any this or that, they're always going to go back to whatever their essential message is. They are usually going to relay to us that this is allegory. We can choose to see it as allegory. We can choose to see it as real. We can choose to see it as a metaphor. And then, regardless of what is actually true or not, the information is still serving to us. So we can see already in our world that we are heading towards this potential. We have a lot of reliance on technology. We are learning how to balance these relationships more and more. We are also learning the importance of connecting to Earth, the importance of connecting with each other and ourselves. So regardless if any of this is real or not, it's still a great story and still has a morality tale at the end of it. So I listened to a lot of Bashar and was taken through, that activated something in me. In that moment that I watched my first video, I had tears strolling down my face, this completely visceral emotional reaction to something that I had forgotten. And that activated and initiated a series of meditations and dreams and understandings and synchronicities, again, things that I may go through in the future more, specifically about how we can channel the channel, how you can learn to do this. And there's different techniques and meditations that I was given that honestly right now are they feel like they're stored in the files. And I'm sure at some point in the future I'll be like, oh, well, this is the exact permission slip, and there will be more specific videos about that. This is just kind of a general overview of who I am and what was in the ET Phone Gita blog. So then Jen and I followed our excitement to go and have a private session with Bashar through Darryl Anka. And we were so excited. Honestly, I think I was more excited to meet Darryl Anka than I would be to meet Johnny Depp. For sure. Well, yeah. not gonna go into the details on that one, but you know, who knows, who knows. So we were so totally like starstruck, and he was so kind and welcoming and so grounded, and there really was just like this instant connection of family, and on some levels like a recognition of each other. I was using the restroom, and as I was closing the door, I heard Darryl ask Jen, is she an actress? Like almost like trying to pinpoint where he may have known me from. At some point we were chatting too, and I said to him, oh, my dad's name is Darryl. It's spelt differently, but it's the same name, and my dad is always wearing Hawaiian shirts when he's not working. When Darryl is working, bringing Bashar through, he's usually wearing a Hawaiian shirt. There's different frequencies and different reasons why the beings have chosen to use Hawaii as a permission slip. It's clued into a lot for us. Again, another topic that I will go into. And so that was like a neat synchronicity that we clued in on. And Darryl also said to us that, oh, my sister's name is Jen. So Jen, it was a really fun moment, and we all felt, I think, connected with each other in that moment and knew like, maybe there's something going on here. And so Darryl went into the altered state that day and brought Bashar through. And I was, again, like up in the rafters. I was getting my own information. I was receiving just this love and this compassion from them. I didn't really ask too many questions that day. Jen did most of the talking and got a lot of really good information. Again, it feels very dreamlike to me, and I don't remember much of the specifics, except that it was a wonderful, lovely experience. And when Darryl was walking outside, walking us to the door, he gave both of us a very sincere, grounded hug. And he looked me in the eye and said, if you ever need anything, you can call me. And I still to this day, I'm not really quite sure if he actually said it or not, but I'm pretty sure he did, because I reached out to him many times over the years and shared different feelings and experiences, and a lot of the times there was a lot of resistance and a lot of fear that I was moving through that he helped me to be able to ground. So I think he would have told me to very kindly, please leave me alone, if it was something that he had not actually said. Then, shortly after that, maybe about a year or so later, I got the calling myself to go to Hawaii. And I was receiving dreams and tons of synchronicities, but I was still very stubborn, and I was also learning how to ground all of this information and was going through different shifts in my personal life. Again, I think something that a lot of us go through when we are grounding these new energies, there is adjustment periods to happen. But I followed the excitement after connecting with April Rochelle, who runs Bashar Communications. And she's very kind and lovely and really assured me that this is a calling that you're having to go to Hawaii. And anytime we act on our excitement whatsoever, you will be supported, but especially with something like this. She validated for me, this is a calling for you. She also validated to me that the area that I should visit first would be the Big Island. And then we kind of left it at that. I was very thankful for her reflections. A couple of weeks later, I had a dream where I heard Ke ala ke akua, and I was swimming with dolphins, and this thundering Ke ala ke akua came in, and I woke up with a jolt, and I looked it up, Ke ala ke kua. Sure enough, it's a very real place. It translates to Gateway of the Gods, and it is an area on the Big Island on the West Coast and South Kona where there are a lot of wild spinner dolphins. I was never really interested in dolphins. Sure, they're cool, they're amazing animals, but it wasn't like a spirit animal of mine. I wasn't necessarily curious about it. But I went, it felt so right. I had $800 and a one-way ticket and a backpack, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I ended up staying there for about 2 years and met many, many beautiful friends, and everything fell into alignment. I got a work trade and then another job at a great cafe. I was able to go and swim with the wild dolphins just about every day. And there were times that they weren't there and I would still swim. I would swim miles and miles and receive their downloads and their frequencies. And I ended up spending what I can honestly say is hundreds of hours with the wild spinner dolphins, receiving lessons about how to further connect to our own hybrid natures, to connect to the planet, and also to begin to have contact with other consciousnesses, to have contact with aliens. It is my perspective that dolphins are of an alien consciousness, an alien soul that is in a very alien body in a way, especially from our human land perspectives. At this point, I started practicing channeling more because I met people through synchronicity that knew who Bashar was. And so the beings became clearer and clearer. In the early stages of channeling, oftentimes you can connect to something that is a mirror of different subconscious layers that you are moving through. Maybe there also might be different beings that represent themselves as the initiators, as the one to help the channel learn. And so I went through those stages before I went to Hawaii. I would channel for friends to help ground the information, but I was also very aware that I was learning, and it was choppy, and different ideas and different beings would represent themselves to me. But at this point in Hawaii, when I started channeling for friends of mine that I met that also knew of Bashar, this child energy presented itself to me, and I realized this is the being, or at least the being for now. And I was beginning to piece together different aspects of what I call the Bashar mythology. This is, from my perspective, I've now come to believe very real, that there was this gray human hybrid program, and that there is a result of different hybrid races that come from that. Bashar is from a planet called Sasani. He is a member of the Sasani race. Then there are members of what I am calling the Is.a.Bell. It's how I am understanding the translation. These would then be a different race of beings that are slightly closer to our genetics. Then there are the beings which I believe Bashar is calling the Shalanaya. I am choosing for the moment to refer to them as the hybrid children. These would be a different race that are more closely connected to our genetics, have more human tendencies, and in some cases are more so existing in our current timeline. Again, totally gets a little wacky. We're getting real crazy here with all these different characters, but always, always, always is allegory and it's symbolism. So the Sasani, to me, feel very kind of like ancient, wise, kind of almost like the Yoda too. They very much have this very integrated trickster energy. Or the Karate Kid, I can't think of his, it'll come to me, but you know who I'm talking about. And the Is.a.Bell are a bit more maybe of like the kind of brotherly sister energy. Again, very much from my perspective. They also appear to me to be a bit more tribal, a bit kind of more like the beings from James Cameron's Avatar, but they look different. They look more like a human and a gray. I have all sorts of images in my mind that eventually I will start drawing and sharing, and this is all part of the commercial, of the teaser of things to come. And then we have the hybrid children, who are very much a playful child energy. And so these archetypes and these symbols can all work together in concert to help give us different energies and different understandings, once again, regardless of whether or not it's true. You know, we can even look at it as, you know, the old woman, the crone, the maiden, and the child. These are classical archetypes that help humans and help all beings understand story. So at this point in Hawaii, a hybrid child presented herself, and it was clear and it was fun and it was really easy to slip into and to play. I received a dream one night that I was being invited. It felt like I was at a round table of beings in a sense, and I was being invited by the beings themselves to attend the next Bashar session in LA. The next morning I woke up and received the email from Bashar Communications announcing their upcoming sessions, and I figured, that sounds like fun. I think I should go. I think I'm going to go. And I, once again, didn't really have any idea of what I was gonna do or how I was gonna do it. I had very little money. I didn't know if I was gonna go back to Hawaii. A part of me just wanted to be in LA for a while and explore LA. So once again, I went without having any idea of what I was actually going to do. So I went to the session and I was very playful. I used my words very carefully to make it seem like that I may have actually been a hybrid child myself that had just landed from a spaceship. But that was not true. I just used very tricky wording, I suppose, because I don't even know why. Oftentimes when I go to speak in front of Bashar, and this was the first time that I ever did so publicly, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't have a question. I don't have an idea. I got up in front of Bashar and this okay. He says to me, it just came out. It was this spontaneous light language that he confirmed for me is an ancient language from Sirius, and it was this cadence and these sounds that I had developed and played with after being with the dolphins a lot. The dolphins, I believe, are connected to Sirius and Pleiades energy. Again, like, we can't get lost in the details with all this stuff. It's not what matters. And then I went through and kind of had this whole little play acting in a way, but without actually lying or misleading anyone that I was potentially a hybrid kid. Interesting, actually, Bridget Nielsen was at that seminar that day and got her own information that really propelled her down her current expansive, amazing, exciting track of learning about the hybrid children and her connection. So that was a big day for a lot of us there, and there was a lot that was activated that day. Then I was in LA, things worked out for a bit. Mom and Dad bailed me out, like, thank you so much. Sent me some money and I got a job and I got an apartment, and then I realized I wasn't happy in LA, and so I went back to Hawaii. But, almost forgot a good part of the story, while I was in LA, I met a really good friend of mine, Steve, who now works with Bashar Communications, and I did a channeling for him in the home that I was living in the Venice area at that time. I was living with a couple of very avid meditation and yoga teachers, and I was in my room. There was no one else in the house. There was a meditation bell in my housemate's room right on the other side of the wall. I was in the altered state. For me, it's a bit different, I think, than Darryl and maybe for some of the earlier channels. I am slightly conscious. I think that I remember more than maybe he does. And I think those of us that are starting down this path are retaining a bit more and more and more, because it's a way for us to be able to integrate the energy more smoothly. And it's just kind of less weird. There's, you know, they laid the foundations for us, and so it's easier for us to be slightly more conscious. So again, I had this moment of this split awareness where the being told me, hey, get ready for it, get ready, like something's gonna happen. And this sound like came out of my bridge that I don't know how to recreate. But again, I had been trained as a vocalist for since I was 9 years old. I was like an opera singer. And I had never felt anything like this resonance come out of me. And then I felt, wait for it, wait for it. And in the next room, we hear this boom. A bell went off in the room next door behind the wall. And I felt the being ask Steve, did you catch that? Did you feel it? And he said, yeah, I did. Gita made this kind of weird noise, and then a bell went off. And she was so happy and so giddy and said, yes, sometimes I like to make bells go off just with my frequency. It's a game that I like to play. And then we moved on, and there were different questions. I didn't tell anyone the story. I just kind of cataloged it. Oh, that happened. That was pretty cool. I know what I felt, and I know that I've never felt a noise like that come out of me before. Interesting. Now I'm back in Hawaii and I'm channeling for another friend of mine whose name is Kyle. Kyle I also met at a Bashar event, and then he came out to visit and hang out in Hawaii. And I was channeling for him, and he asked the being, do you have a name? Again, I had not told anyone about this Bell story. The being said to Kyle, we don't necessarily have names the way that you do. We have specific frequencies, but you're welcome to give me a name if you'd like, and we think that's really fun if you'd like to play along with us. Kyle took a moment and tuned in, and she must have whispered in his ear or something did, because then he said, Is.a.Bell. I just heard Is.a.Bell. Is.a.Bell. And she laughs and laughs and laughs, and she's so joyous and says, Is.a.Bell, yes, that is perfect. I like to make bells go off just with my frequency. Everyone is a bell. We are all instruments and we are all bells. Is.a.Bell. So that's how Is.a.Bell got her name, who represents herself as a hybrid child from this lineage. She says that she is a first contact specialist in training who has in some cases worked directly with Bashar, but also with different aspects of the Is.a.Bell and different members of the Sasani. Once again, metaphor, allegory, we're all just learning and we're all playing, and there's so many different ways that we can get information that are applicable to us. But I've had enough synchronicity, enough of the name, specifically Is.a.Bell, following me. I've got neighbors right over here with two lovely, really fun girls. One of them, whose name is Zoe, actually looks a little bit more like me. And then the other girl, her name is Is.a.Bell, and she looks more closely to how Is.a.Bell shows me, blonde, blue-eyed. And so I've gotten enough synchronicity and enough kind of verification for me personally at this point, where I'm operating from the belief system that these beings are very real, but then also very emphatic about holding the space, that the importance of story and the imagination and symbolism. So then I moved back from Hawaii because I realized that it was time for me to reconnect with my family here. There were lessons that I needed. I just knew it was time. And I took a bit of a pause on the channeling, a bit of a pause, honestly, on connecting to the extraterrestrial energies at all. I was getting, it was very important for me to connect with my family, to learn how to get really stable, to be like, oh, I can work a regular job and be able to pay rent and function in society. And I did have a couple of kind of odd dreams where at this point in time I did start to question the intention of the Bashar energy, the intentions of some of these beings. And that was a journey that I now understand I needed to go on, because it showed me the importance of discernment and the importance of, this is all story. You're getting lost in the details. Does the information serve you? It doesn't matter what density, what dimension, all this pomp and circumstance is not the meat of the information. But I had to go through my discernment and my doubt to be able to find that place of understanding that it is about the message. Then the YouTube video, the incredible hybridized human video, came out on YouTube. Someone took a clip from one of the sessions and released it, and 30,000 people saw it, and I had all these people contacting me and thinking that I was this hybridized human, that I had actually just landed, and I didn't want anyone to get the wrong idea. I felt this sense of responsibility. I knew that my ability to respond was activated, and I wanted to tell my story, even though I knew I was coming from this place of a bit of doubt, of uncertainty, a bit of a negative place. But I also had the utmost respect for Bashar Communications and April and Darryl and the friendships that they had forged with me over the years. And it was my way of telling my story up to that point. And again, always taking it back to the importance of story and the message. And I hemmed and hawed about if I wanted to actually share this or not, to write this whole blog, until one night I was in San Rafael, which is about 30 miles north of San Francisco, a very quiet residential area, very sweet. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I had a long day, work, yoga, taught a yoga class, had a music rehearsal with a friend of mine, and then I was coming home. I was stone cold sober, and I was getting my things out of my car, and I see this black triangle ship fly over the house. And it was about the size of like a 50-cent piece. You know, it was far enough away where it was comfortable, but close enough where I could see the detail. I could see the circular lights. I could see the kind of hexagon etchings on the glass. It was very detailed. And I thought in that moment, well, that's exactly what you would imagine it to look like. Like, that looks like a movie. Like, that looks like CGI. Like, that's exactly what you would imagine. And then I didn't care. I recognized it as being part of the Galactic Federation or the Interstellar Alliance, and I was like, cool. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And I watched it go behind a tree line, and I thought for a second, oh, I could like run after it and like see it again just to like make sure that what I saw was real. But more so, I was exhausted and like super blasé and indifferent, and I just was like, I'm tired. Like, I'm going to bed. Like, thanks guys, but whatever. And so I go home, get into my house, and I'm brushing my teeth, and I look at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, hey, you just saw that. That was real. Do not forget what you just saw. Your blasé reaction was kind of impressive and perfect, but don't forget what you just saw. No one was with me. I wished throughout the years that someone was with me. I did tell my friend Jen, and oftentimes it seems that she has believed me more than I believed myself, and she'll remind me like, hey, you remember when you saw a spaceship? And so I wrote the blog and I released it, and I got a lot of really beautiful responses and people very appreciative of me stepping out and telling my story. But still, I just wasn't really quite ready to dive all the way into the deep end, and I basically kind of stopped channeling for a while. The ET energies were still very much around me, but I got really centered in a yoga practice and being out in nature and just being really happy to like have my own little apartment and be able to function in reality and take care of myself. And then I went to a Bashar session in November of 2017, so recent. And I had practiced channeling a few times between then and did it for a few friends just to kind of test the connection. Like, yep, it's still there, it still totally works. Like, that's really interesting. It's kind of just like another tool I have in my bag of tricks. I can write songs, I can act, I can like tap dance a little bit, I can like fake ballet, and like, I guess I can also serve as a biological telephone for extraterrestrials. Cool. And so I went to the Bashar event in 2017. It was really lovely to connect with Darryl and April and all of the Bashar communications, and the energy just felt so much like family. I've now made friendships with a lot of the people who work for Bashar Communications, and I go to these events and I'm like, oh, it's like way less nerve-wracking or kind of weird seeing Darryl. It's just friendly and beautiful. And I felt in my gut like, okay, like I'm ready to start doing this, whatever this means. And I met my friend Connor, who I have now been channeling for on a pretty regular basis, and we are putting together at some point a little documentary kind of movie thing with Is.a.Bell. But I met him that day, and that spurred inspiration and shot me down a certain road. And then I saw on Facebook a few months ago that a Sadie Strunk was going to be interviewing Darryl Anka. And I checked out her Facebook and her YouTube. She's got like a very minimal following, but has really fun content. And I knew she just followed her excitement and contacted him and was like, hey, do you want to be on my YouTube channel? I've got like 160 followers. Cool. Rock it. Follow that excitement. There are so many people that would have had that idea but would have not followed through with it. And I knew that that's how that had gone down, and I was so proud of her, and I was so excited to connect with her, and I knew that I wanted to reach out with her, but also in the moment I felt this sense of pride. I was like, you go girl, like get it, put yourself out there, like yes, I'm just gonna kind of hang out in the shadows for a little bit. I'm just gonna hang out in the wings, but like Sadie Strunk, go on stage, girl, like do it. I was just in the shadows. Literally like 2 hours later, Bashar Communications released the title for their upcoming session, Stepping from the Shadows. I was like, dang, putting me on blast telepathically, Bashar, like, whoa. Put me on blast, like, okay, cool. That's awesome, I'm going. Definitely going, and I'm going to contact Sadie Strunk, and it's gonna be tons of fun from here. And so I contacted her and I started channeling for her, and she got to meet Is.a.Bell and got a lot of really beautiful information that was pretty necessary for her time in her own transition in her own personal life right now. And we hit it off, and I wanted to meet her. I wanted her to come out here so we could do an interview and a channeling session, and we thought it'd be super fun if we could time it around the Stepping from the Shadows event. And so we did. I flew her out here. It was my highest excitement to sponsor her trip, and I'm like, you know what, we'll figure it out later. I'm not worried about the money. I'm using you as like a permission slip in that way. I totally used her as a permission slip because it was my highest excitement to gift this to her, because it was my way of demonstrating to these energies like, I'm in, like, let's go. And so we hit it off, and we had a beautiful, amazing, wonderful time. And that brings me more or less up to now. I'm putting myself out there and sharing more of these stories and more of my perspectives about this, and how fun it is to see all of us stepping up in our own way to be able to bring this information about with our own specifics and our own specialties. And I'm so thankful for different members of the community that have stepped out before. I feel a kindred spirit connection with Bridget Nielsen. Totally makes me a little fun, comfortable sometimes. Again, I stole that from Jen Thompson. She gave me fun, comfortable. That's how I feel sometimes with Bridget, but it's a marker for what more of us can be able to step into, and I'm so thankful, so thankful for her light. And I'm so thankful for everyone who is watching and who is curious. And this has maybe been a little long. I don't even know if this is all recorded. I've just done this all in one take. And more or less, yeah, we are up to oh, wait, no. Here's where we end it. Hokey pokey. So once again, I go up to Bashar, and I oftentimes don't know what I'm going to say. Mostly, I'd have no idea. And I had some rambling questions about, or statements about the channeling that I've been doing with Is.a.Bell, and needing a sense of confirmation in a way, but also knowing that I don't need that confirmation because it's all part of the story. And does it serve you? Yes. Is it fun? Yes. Are you energized? Yes. Then great. And then I just had all of this energy in my body, and I started doing the hokey pokey. You put your right hand in, you put your right hand out, you put your right hand in, and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey, and you turn yourself around, and that's what it's all about. I think they actually edited it out of the video that they released for everyone, but that's okay. I still love you guys. Because that's what it's all about, and it might, maybe it waste of time, or it's too silly, or maybe it's in there. I don't know what reality we're in. We're all Mandela affected. It's fun. And yeah, we're constantly spinning in and out and flipping ourselves backwards and forwards, and we're always shifting and we're always changing, and that's what it is all about. So thank you for listening to this if you've stayed all the way through, and I honestly am so grateful for the amount of positive reinforcement and comments and likes and loves and shares that I have gotten thus far. This has been scary for me, but more so, it's been really fun and really rewarding, and I'm very excited to see where it all goes from here. So have a lovely day, everyone. Like, subscribe, share. I feel really silly saying that, but I guess that's what you do. And unconditional love to you.